Hey folks, Eric Stakelbeck here. Welcome to a Watchman Friday live stream newscast coming to you on this Friday, heading into the weekend with some big news. And the big news was we were all waiting, and many with kind of bated breath, for this speech by the leader of Hezbollah, Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah. He gave the speech today in Beiroet. It is in the book. So what exactly did Hassan Nasrallah say? We're going to break that down. What does it mean for Israel, for the United States, for the region, for the potential of a multi-front war opening up against Israel? So that's the big story today, folks. Israeli and U.S. intelligence officials were watching Nasrallah very closely. What was he going to say? Well, he has said it. So we're going to break that down, and also Russia. Folks, we've been documenting this really over the past several months here in the newscast, the unraveling. I've called it the great unraveling of relations between Russia and Israel. It has now taken a potentially dangerous new turn, with the Russian mercenary group, the Vagner Group, reportedly about to arm Hezbollah with anti-aircraft air defense systems. Wow, major deal. Also, Israel reportedly is no longer giving Russia a heads up before it carries out airstrikes in Syria. So that's big as well. And there's more, some very disturbing comments by Russia's ambassador to the UN about Israel that you're not going to believe, or maybe you will if you know Bible prophecy, because I believe that the way things are lining up and the chess pieces are moving on the board is preparing the way for that Gog-Magog war. Now, you may be watching for the first time and say, Gog, what? Hey, what is this guy talking about? Well, the war of Gog and Magog is laid out in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39. It involves the leaders of this latter days coalition, I believe, are Russia, Iran, and Turkey. And surprise, surprise, all three are making major moves against Israel. So we'll talk about that as well. And yes, you might say, here he goes with the Bible. This is a news channel, but delivering news from a biblical perspective. One and all are welcome, but this is absolutely news from a Christian biblical perspective, just so you know. And if you like it, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. We're coming to you every day now, for the most part, with live updates here on the channel. We want to be your one-stop shop, as, look, the Middle East is on fire, and events unfolding there right now in the world's most chaotic and volatile region will affect all of us profoundly, no matter where we live. Don't doubt it. What happens in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East. Let's break everything down. Number one, by the way, a warning from Israel, and this just came across the wire before I joined you, a warning from Israel to Jews around the world to not display Jewish symbols. I guess wearing a kippah and different signs of Jewishness. Israel is saying, be careful. And they're talking in particular, I'm sad to say, folks, and we all know this, if you've been following what's been going on since the massacre of October 7th, in the West, in the United States, where I'm sitting right now, in Western Europe, we have virulent, despicable, demonic waves of anti-Semitic, pro-Hamas rhetoric happening right now. Massive marches, a march this weekend planned in Washington, D.C., a big one, pro-Hamas, not pro-Palestinian. It is pro-Hamas. And the rhetoric many times is genocidal against Israel and the Jewish people. D.C. this weekend, London next weekend on Great Britain's Day of Remembrance for their fallen soldiers. You'll have thousands upon thousands, in what an insult, right, of these pro-Hamas protesters planning to protest on that day, and the list goes on. New York City, it seems every weekend there's some new massive anti-Semitic outbreak, and thousands taking to the streets. This is the West circa 2023. Folks, we have a problem, and the wave of anti-Semitism we're seeing right now in 2023 is worse than at any time since World War II. Don't doubt it. And my concern is that it's going to get worse. The Bible's pretty clear that the Jewish people, the nation of Israel, will be increasingly targeted in the days that are coming. But here's the good news. We've got millions of Bible-believing Christians around the world who are standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel and the Jewish people for such a time as this. We will fulfill that biblical mandate to bless the people of Israel, to stand with Israel, because it's right. Folks, look, there's really no gray areas here. This is a battle, quite literally, between good and evil. There's no gray areas. When Hamas butchers 1,400 Israelis, mostly civilians, women, children, the elderly, Holocaust survivors, gouges their eyes out, burns them alive in front of their parents, and drags others away into the bowels of hell in the tunnels beneath Gaza City, that's evil with a capital E. There are no gray areas here. If you're here in the West and you're joining these pro-Hamas protests, or you're on a college campus ripping down the signs showing the Israeli hostages, you are supporting evil. And about the college campuses, some have said, and I'll get into Russia and Nasrallah in a minute, but this needs to be said. About the college campuses, some have said, well, they're young kids. Yeah, give them a pass. They're 18, 19, 20, 21. They don't know quite what they're doing. When you're in college, you flirt with different ideologies and, cut them some slack. Hey, listen, when I was in college, I did not know the Lord. And I was living in the world, and I was rowdy and all that stuff. But I knew the difference between right and wrong and good and evil. And when people were beheading, well, it didn't happen, thankfully, but if people were beheading babies, as Hamas did a few weeks ago, you wouldn't see me out there marching in favor of it, even though I was just a kid, to hear these defenders of what's happening on the college campuses explain it away and excuse it. But I digress. Let's get into Nasrallah. Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah emerged from his bunker today. It's almost like Groundhog Day. He pops his head out once a year, but he emerged, maybe a little bit more than that, but gave a speech in Beiroet. We had throngs in the streets of Beiroet, again, waiting with bated breath. What's he going to say? Our sheikh, who is a client, who is a puppet of the Iranian regime. How does it feel for all those Hezbollah supporters out there? And we have some trolls who will be here on the chat today as well. We've got thousands with us, by the way. Welcome one and all from all around the world. We'll have thousands more before we're done today. But I ask supporters of Hezbollah and Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the Houthis, and again, don't doubt it. You'll see the commenters here beneath this video when it's posted, and right now live in the chat, you'll see them. I ask you, how does it feel to be a puppet, a tool, cannon fodder for the Iranian regime? Because that's ultimately what Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, the Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, even the Assad regime to an extent, that's ultimately how the mullahs in Tehran view them. The head of the snake resides in the palaces of the supreme leader of Iran, the Iranian regime. And look, Hamas has been what a tool it's been in Iran's toolbox against Israel, but that may be about to disappear for good, which brings us to Nasrallah, his comments today. We had a translation from a colleague of mine, a Lebanon native. Here is what Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah said, and everyone was watching this. What's he going to say? Is he going to declare war against Israel and open up in a massive way? Hey, look, folks, that northern front's already open. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But open it up with the full brunt, the full force of Hezbollah's arsenal of some 150,000 rockets and missiles pointed at every inch of Israel, which, quick reminder, in case you forgot or in case you didn't know, Israel is the size of the state of New Jersey. I grew up in Philly. I spent a lot of time in Jersey. It's not very big, trust me. And that's the size of Israel, roughly the parameters of the world's one and only Jewish state, which means Hezbollah can blanket Israel with rockets and missiles. And by the way, hundreds at least of precision-guided missiles every inch of Israel. And Nasrallah talked about that today. Here's what he said. Let me just pull it up for you. 1 second. And we have it or we don't. Let me see. Apologies. Can I find it? He said a lot of nasty things. Case closed. In all seriousness, let's get exactly what he said. Let's get the transcript. And I am tracking it down. I cannot track it down. Okay. off the top of my head, number one, he talked a bunch about the United States. That was interesting to me. Now, many have said that he has been deterred from acting out in a major way because of the U.S. presence. The U.S. presence, two carrier groups off the coast of Israel, off the coast of Lebanon as well. And we've got some points right here. My trusty producer, Daniel, sent them along. Thank you, Daniel. But he talked a bunch about the United States, and he blamed what's going on right now essentially on the United States, what's happening in Gaza right now. He said this lays at the U.S.'s feet. And he said, look, if you want to get involved, we are going to respond. Basically, Nasrallah said, America, you are not safe. A lot of it, folks, honestly, was the kind of rhetoric that we have come to expect from Nasrallah. Nothing new or original here. I mean, a lot of people, again, were expecting maybe a big declaration of war. And apologies for the delay there in finding the bullet points, but I have them now. But a lot of it was a kind of typical Nasrallah rhetoric. I have to say that I've heard before. I didn't hear anything new. And if you're Hamas, you're probably not too happy about it, because Hamas over the past 4 weeks, I believe, has been waiting for Hezbollah to go all in. Hezbollah has not. And Nasrallah, although he threatened the U.S., he threatened Israel today with the specter, the looming specter that he would go all in, he did not commit to going all in. And I honestly, folks, didn't expect him to declare war on Israel and start firing missiles as the speech was going on. At least you would think he'd want an element of surprise. So I didn't think there was going to be a Hezbollah bombardment concurrent to his speech anyway. But here's the other things he said about the United States. Then we'll get into what he said about Israel, Hamas, and other aspects of this war. He said, I tell the Americans that you can stop the aggression against Gaza because it is your aggression. Again, Nasrallah, like his masters, and I do mean masters, in Tehran, have been blaming what's going on the United States. He says, your American fleets, remember I said two carrier groups in the Mediterranean, your American fleets, he said, in the Mediterranean do not and will never instill fear in us. I want to make clear that the fleets you threaten us with, we have also made preparations to counter them. So Nasrallah, again, making threats, again, par for the course for him, a little more specific this time, but nonetheless, he said, what is unfolding on our Lebanese front will not be limited to the Lebanon front, and it will extend beyond that. Interesting. Again, a lot of bluster, a lot of threats, but if you are Hamas, and let me pull this up for you, you're saying, okay, when are you going to join the fray and make this a truly multi-front war? When will the entire ring of fire ignite, the Iran-backed ring of fire? And here we go. Let me read this to you now. A Hamas official named Osama Hamdan, he's a senior Hamas official, said in the wake of Nasrallah's speech, okay, he talked a good game. Hezbollah must now prove its commitment to Hamas's victory in Gaza. And he said, quote, this is a Hamas official talking about Nasrallah and Hezbollah, their dear friends and allies. His words, Nasrallah's words, about the importance of stopping the attack on Gaza and the importance of Hamas's victory are clear and important. Hezbollah's commitment to these two goals now requires action on the ground. Interesting. So Nasrallah kind of has backed himself into a corner, I believe, here, folks, where, hey, it's been bluster, it's been threats, it's been vows to destroy the Zionist entity and to march to Jerusalem and reclaim Al-Aqsa. But although there have been serious blow-ups, quite literally, between Hezbollah and Israel along that Israel-Lebanon border, as I mentioned a minute ago, Hezbollah has a massive arsenal with the rockets, the missiles, tens of thousands of foot soldiers, etc. It has not gone all in. And Hezbollah is magnitudes more powerful than Hamas in every way. We know that. But it has not gone all in. I say thank God, because it's given Israel time to crush Hamas before it potentially turns its sights to Hezbollah, and I believe Israel should. I believe the communities in northern Israel, the thousands of those over 30 communities that have evacuated near the Lebanon border, I believe there's a good chance they're not going to return anytime soon. Would you? would you, if you were living in those communities along the border, say, we just saw what Hamas did on October 7th, carried out a massive massacre, the worst massacre of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And we have a group even more vicious and powerful on our border, on the Lebanon border, across from where we live. Will Hezbollah duplicate what Hamas did on October 7th in the north? If you're living in the north, of course, that's at the forefront of your mind. You've got a wife, you've got kids. Who wouldn't be thinking that after what happened on October 7th? Any Israeli community that is bordering a community in Gaza, Lebanon, or the communities in Judea and Samaria, by the way, the biblical heartland, bordering Arab communities there, you're thinking of this, no doubt. And ultimately, this has a severe economic impact on Israel, long term. So Hezbollah must be dealt with. I don't know if it's tomorrow, I don't know if it's next week or a year from now. But folks, it's unsustainable. The situation in the north is unsustainable. If Hezbollah is not dealt with decisively, much like Hamas will be, and look, I know that how bloody and horrible it's going to be to the north. I know, and every Israeli knows that. But the alternative is October 7th writ large, courtesy of Hezbollah, potentially. Hezbollah has that kind of firepower and those kind of well-trained foot soldiers. So I think it's unsustainable for Israel to live under the shadow of Hezbollah's massive rocket and missile arsenal for much longer, especially after October 7th, and especially after Hezbollah is licking its chops right now and sensing Israel vulnerable and doing much more than probing right now, as we've documented on the newscast the past several weeks, anti-tank missiles on a daily basis. Look, Hezbollah has lost close to 50 fighters at last count. Israel has hit them and hit them hard, in particular through drone strikes. Israel has also lost several soldiers in these. They're much more than skirmishes with Hezbollah. It's a low-level state of war up there. That front is open right now. Every day there's engagements back and forth, but Hezbollah, again, has not unleashed the full might of its arsenal. But neither is Israel when it comes to the north. And if Israel wants to get serious in the north and unleash its capabilities, then Hezbollah will not be long for this world. And Lebanon, which harbors Hezbollah, will pay a very heavy price. Israeli officials have been clear about that time and time again. So we shall see. Does Israel have the room to operate here and crush Hamas, eliminate Hamas? And look, Gaza City is essentially encircled right now. Israel, as we reported on yesterday's newscast, and if you missed any of our newscasts, just check it out in our archives here on the homepage. But Israel working diligently to destroy that tunnel network known as the Metro, 300 miles of tunnels underneath Gaza. It's a city beneath a city underneath Gaza, and well over 1,000, over 1,500 reportedly of these tunnels interconnected, and Israel's working to destroy those. It's a slog for sure, no doubt. But does Israel turn its sights to Hezbollah when it's done with Hamas? Or, as we've discussed this again and again over the past month, it's been almost a month since October 7th. Hard to believe, that dark day. But do Hezbollah and Iran, seeing a crucial chess piece on their diabolical chessboard, a crucial ring in that ring of fire that they have employed around Israel, seeing it in its death throes and about to be eliminated, do Iran and Hezbollah ride to the rescue, so to speak, and go all in and really open other fronts against Israel? That's the big question. Even after Nasrallah's speech today, it continues to be the big question. He's making a lot of threats, a lot of bluster. Some of the other interesting things he said, and then I want to move on to Russia. Folks, this is kind of slipping beneath the radar. We've got some very important developments there involving Russia and Israel. In 1 minute, I will get to that. But let me say real quick that Nasrallah said that, and who knows how credible this is, he said, we didn't know that October 7th was coming. According to Nasrallah, he had no idea. Hezbollah did not know, and he said, I applauded, I cheered. It was a great day. We love what Hamas did, but they acted on their own. We didn't know. Now, Israeli intelligence officials and Israel's leaders and U.S. officials have said, look, we don't know if Iran on that day called Hamas and said, go. And if the entire Ring of Fire was aware that it was going to happen on that day on October 7th. But certainly the Iranian regime and Hezbollah to a degree, their fingerprints were all over October 7th. October 7th would not have happened without the Iranian regime, its training, its funding, its support. Some 500 Hamas and Islamic Jihad, in case you don't know, Palestinian Islamic Jihad is the other, there's two of them, Iran-backed group operating right now in Gaza with the full support of the Iranian regime. 500 Hamas and Islamic Jihad operatives visited Iran and trained in September in the run-up to the October 7th massacre. That is number one. And number two, we had at least 4 phone calls between Iranian and Hamas leaders in the months leading up to October 7th. And number three, as we documented here in the newscast, frequent meetings between Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iranian officials in Beirout in the weeks leading up to October 7th. But I'm sure it's all just a coincidence, folks. Move along. Nothing to see here or not. We know that the Iranian regime's fingerprints were all over October 7th. Again, October 7th would not have happened without the Iranian regime. The training, the military, the terror, the logistical support, Iran's fingerprints are all over it, which begs the question that I've posed many times here. When will Iran pay a price for that? As I plug my charger in, pardon me, I am still here. There we go. You can still hear me. The joys of live TV. Had to charge the laptop. We're having some issues here. I have a low battery, folks, but 1 second, bear with me. I will continue to talk as I fix it here. But there we go. Hey, it's low tech today. It is charging technology. How wonderful. Hey, we're coming to you down and dirty. I'm just coming to you from my laptop in my home. No bells and whistles. Many times, as you saw in yesterday's newscast, we're in the studio with B-roll and it looks great and graphics. Today, I'm just coming to you kind of raw on the laptop because I wanted to break down everything that's going on. And when you do this live, sometimes you have some so-called technical difficulties like my charger falling out of the outlet. Welcome to live TV or live YouTube chatting and live streaming in 2023. Okay, let's move on to Russia. I really don't have many more takeaways for you folks from Nasrallah today. It was the usual. It was a threat of greater involvement, a threat to open up another front against Israel, go all in and unleash the full arsenal. It was a threat to strike the U.S., but they were threats. It was warnings and threats. Like I said in the title of this newscast today, this live stream is titled Hezbollah's Nasrallah Threatens Escalation Against Israel and the United States. And that about sums it up. If you're Hamas, and I read that quote from Osama Hamdan, that Hamas official, you're saying, hey, we're getting killed out here. We're getting pummeled. They're about to wipe us out. Where are you, Hezbollah? In our hour of greatest need. Hamas is waiting for Hezbollah and the Iranian regime to ride to the rescue. They may never come because they know what Israel will unleash on them if they do. But they still may do it. We just don't know. Anyone who tells you that they know precisely where this is going is not being truthful. Hezbollah may stand back. Hezbollah and Iran may take an L, may take one on the chin, and let Hamas be destroyed. Because Iran may be reserving Hezbollah, its most dangerous and lethal proxy, to fight another day. What would that day be? The day when Israel strikes Iran's nuclear facilities. Now, Iran, that is Iran's main means of retaliation against Israel when that day, not if, but I believe when that day comes, they will unleash Hezbollah against Israel on that day. And you have to think, again, and I discussed this a few minutes ago, that Israel eventually will have to strike Hezbollah perhaps preemptively. And many have speculated that over the weeks. Is it smarter for Israel to act first rather than have October 7th writ large happen and then react to it? Should Israel strike first, especially now when it has, hey, over 300,000 reserve troops called up, Israel unified like never before, everyone on high alert, war footing. Is now the time to eliminate Hezbollah once and for all as well. And even take it to the head of the snake, the Iranian regime. And by taking it to the head of the snake, I don't mean invading Iran. That's not what I'm saying. But Israel has been very proficient over the years in striking Iranian assets, including on Iranian soil, its nuclear facilities, sabotage against them, ballistic missile factories, etc. It's all on the table now, folks. October 7th changed the world forever. Changed the Middle East, changed the world. Ultimately, the reverberations, and you're seeing it already, the reverberations are echoing throughout the world. And certainly throughout the Middle East. Israel will never be the same after that day. And the region will never be the same. Let's move on to Russia. Talking about reverberations around the world. If you doubt me, a little bit of backdrop here. Russia has not roundly condemned the Hamas massacre on October 7th. Russia has been leading the charge at the UN Security Council in calling for Israel to have a, quote, proportionate response and agree to an immediate ceasefire, cease all hostilities against Hamas. Russia also hosted last week a Hamas delegation in Moscow. Talk about salt in the wound. That was the equivalent, I'm an American, that was the equivalent of after 9/11 having Russia host a delegation from Al-Qaeda or the Taliban in 2 weeks after 9/11. That's how bad that was. And needless to say, Israel was highly offended by it, and rightly so. And also there's a delegation from Iran there along with the Hamas delegation. Surprise, surprise. A little bit more backdrop for you before I share the new nuggets. Russia is openly aligned with the Iranian regime. Hezbollah and the Assad regime in Syria seems to be very cozy with Hamas as well. Vladimir Putin's regime is openly and proudly aligned, has a formal military alliance with Iran. These are Israel's greatest enemies, and Russia is in bed with them. So long term, where do you think Russia-Israel relations are going? Nowhere good. Folks, do the math. Vladimir Putin has cast his lot with Israel's greatest enemies, chief among them the Iranian regime. That is a formal, full-blown, full-fledged military alliance and defense agreement right now between Russia and Iran. Russia needs Iran. I never thought I would say that 2 years ago. I said, hey, Iran is the junior partner in that relationship. No, it's all flipped. Russia now needs Iran. It needs Iranian armaments for the war in Ukraine, and it's getting them. So what will Iran get in return? That's the big question. It's supplying Russia with thousands of attack drones and other military means, replenishment, just as North Korea is, by the way, supplying Russia with armaments. You can tell a lot about a man by the company he keeps. Iran, Assad, North Korea, Hamas, Hezbollah, China, Vladimir Putin. But with Iran, what does it get? Look, it's a quid pro quo relationship. Iran's not doing this out of the goodness of its heart when it comes to Russia. It wants something back. It wants something in return. What does Russia give in return? You might be seeing the stirrings of that now, folks. Number one, at the UN the other day, here's what Russia's ambassador to the UN said. Its top diplomat at the UN, I'm going to pull it up and quote it for you directly. Let's see, Vasily Nebenzya, I think I pronounced that right, said at an emergency special session of the UN General Assembly that Israel has a supposed right of self-defense. It's an occupying power that only has a supposed right to self-defense because it's the occupier. And there needs to be a ceasefire right now. Wow, a supposed right to self-defense. Basically, no right to defend itself is what he's saying. He went on to say. That's Russia's top, and that's at Security Council, Russia's top official there. Secondly, the Vagner Group. Remember the Vagner Group? Prigozhin, who was killed in a plane crash a few months ago after the revolt back in late June. The Vagner Group is reportedly set to supply Hezbollah, which is Iran. Folks, Hezbollah in southern Lebanon is essentially Iranian regime west. It's an arm of the Iranian regime, fully fledged, fully functioning. The Vagner Group, which is closely connected to the Russian government, or has been, even though there was the Prigozhin-Putin fallout, obviously, but it's a Russian group, a group of Russian mercenaries who operate around the world. The Vagner Group is prepared to supply Hezbollah with air defense systems, advanced air defense systems. Now, as Hezbollah prepares to potentially strike, or as Israel, prepares to potentially strike Hezbollah, including with heavy airstrikes, when that comes to a head, those air defense systems will come in very handy for Hezbollah. These are two major things, major developments. And lastly, as I said at the top, Israel now reportedly is not giving Russia a heads up before it carries out airstrikes in Syria. Now, as we've documented here in the newscast, Russia and Israel have had what's called a deconfliction mechanism, where before Israel goes into Syria through the air to strike at Iran and Hezbollah there, it will give Russia a heads up. It'll give Russia fair warning. Hey, we're coming in. Make sure there are no Russian forces around this particular area because we're going to bomb there. Deconfliction, no conflict. They have a hotline between Israel and Russia regarding Syria. And to my great shock, I'll be honest, since Russia entered a few years ago, entered Syria in a major way, it's been there now for several years, but to my great shock, Russia has never tried to intervene and block Israeli airstrikes. And my concern all along, and I've said this, is that Russia is going to try to enforce a no-fly zone over Syria. And that's very harmful to Israel for two reasons. Number one, that enables Iran and Hezbollah to have free reign in Syria, to transport advanced weapons into southern Lebanon to be used against Israel. And number two, it enables Iran and Hezbollah to drive closer to the Golan Heights along the Israel-Syria border and essentially duplicate what they've established in southern Lebanon, that base on Israel's doorstep. That is why Israel has carried out hundreds, if not more, of airstrikes against Iran and Hezbollah in Syria over the past several years. If Israel no longer has that freedom of movement in Syria, that is a big problem, that freedom to operate. If Russia says, you know what, Israel, no more, that's enough, that's it. Russia right now controls the skies over Syria, but it has never laid down and put its foot down and said to Israel, no. And it very well could. And I've been concerned about this for years now because, look, again, Russia is all in with Iran, Assad, and Hezbollah. And they're getting their tails handed to them by Israel in Syria, time and time again. Israel has bombed the Aleppo and Damascus airports time and time again to shut down the weapons shipments there under the noses of Russian forces. Does it come to a point where the Iranian regime says to Russia, hey, you're supposed to be our friend, our ally, and we're supplying you with massive amounts of armaments for use in Ukraine. We're bailing you out. When are you going to do something for us? And what can you do for us, Russia? You can send a message to the Zionist entity and forbid them to operate in Syria. Is that outside the realm of possibility as we talk about a Russia-Iran alliance, a quid pro quo relationship, folks? I don't think so. Which brings us to the closing thought here as we wrap up and the prophetic perspective. Look, the prophet Ezekiel is very clear about this, and some have debated and said, I don't think Russia's involved. I do believe Russia is a part of that latter days invasion force that comes against Israel, along with Iran and Turkey at the head of it. And look at what's happening in Turkey right now with Erdogan and his vicious anti-Semitic rhetoric and his praise and support of Hamas. Now, that's not to say that the current leadership in Russia and the current leadership in Turkey will be around or will be in power by the time this invasion commences. But the nations, it's pretty clear to my mind that Russia, Turkey, Iran are at the head, along with other Muslim nations in North Africa and in Central Asia. The question you may have is, oh my gosh, what happens? go and read the Bible. Ezekiel 38 and 39, and you'll see that things don't end too well for this latter days. And that's the term Ezekiel uses. In the latter days, the last days, you will come against Israel. But things don't go too well for this latter days invasion force, and they meet their demise when the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, intervenes in a mighty way and shows himself to the world. I'll keep you in suspense. Go and read it over your weekend here as we head into the weekend. But folks, we live in Bible times right now. These are prophetic times. You're watching the pages of the Bible come to life before your very eyes. So now more than ever, I'm going to step up and stand strong and stand for the Lord and be an ambassador for Christ and stand with his land, the land of Israel. Stand with all that's good and true. Because again, as I mentioned at the top, there are really no gray areas here because we have a gathering storm of evil. It's not just gathering, it's here now. We are in a massive spiritual battle. We battle not against flesh and blood ultimately, but against spirits and principalities. We're in it right now. So put on the full armor of God from head to toe. Pray constantly. Pray boldly. Prayer works. Hey, one last note before we go. A lot of people have asked me how they can help Israel right now. And those beleaguered communities in the north of Israel and the south of Israel, some 300,000 Israelis displaced in the fighting. Check out our good friends at Meir Panim. That's mpgive.org. They are an incredible Israeli humanitarian and charitable organization that is really being the hands and feet of the Lord on the ground right now, serving and helping and feeding these needy Israelis, including the families of those killed on October 7th. Meir Panim's on the front lines, helping and blessing these families in the toughest spot of their lives. I can vouch for Meir Panim 100%. I don't promote a lot of organizations here. If you watch me, you know that. If I do, you know I believe in them. And I can vouch for Meir Panim 100% because I've worked alongside them. I've been on the ground at their soup kitchens in Israel, feeding Holocaust survivors. They are the real deal. So if you want to bless Israel, fulfill that biblical mandate in Israel's time of greatest need right now, check out Meir Panim. It's mpgive.org. You won't regret it. Good people doing God's work. Hey, thanks so much for joining us here today on the live stream. Until next time, we will probably come to you this weekend, I'm sure. As things unfold, we will update you with the next, day and time of the next live stream. Stay tuned. So again, subscribe and click the notification bell and you'll get the alert. Okay. So stay tuned here. We're with you. We're standing shoulder to shoulder for such a time as this. God bless you. And until next time, remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.